Welcome to the Reduce Cyber Risk Podcast, where we provide you the training and tools you need for your cybersecurity career. Hi, my name is Shon Gerber, and I'm your host for this action-packed, informative podcast. Join me each week as I provide you the information you need to grow your cybersecurity knowledge while taking practical and actionable steps to protect your business from the evil hacker horde. All right, let's get going. This is Shon Gerber from Reduce Cyber Risk, and welcome to Reduce Cyber Risk Podcast. This is February 11th, 2019. All right, let's get going. All right, in the cybersecurity news, and if you are not familiar with how we roll out our podcast for Reduce Cyber Risk, I provide the podcast out there on a weekly basis, and then from there we will end up putting out a video that you'll see on YouTube. You'll also see this available on the Reduce Cyber Risk website. Also, in addition, I want to kind of point back to Reduce Cyber Risk and signing up for my email list. By doing so, you will get quality content along with some of my bonus stuff that's going to be coming out here real soon, specifically for people that are on my email list. All right, so let's get started. In the cybersecurity news, we got four main topics we're going to get into today. And then after that is done, I'm going to go over my cybersecurity training for this podcast is around cyber awareness training. It'll be part one of two parts, and we will get into the next part will be next week. But we'll be able to cover a lot of key stuff here in this first episode. All right, so let's roll on the cybersecurity news. So what we've got going on is some big trouble down under for the, what do they call them? I think I lost it. We got some big trouble down under for the members of parliament within Australia. And some of the big challenges they ran into is the Department of Parliament supposedly was breached and it was compromised. And if so, one of the concerns they have is they've been telling the members of parliament, or typically known as the MPs, and you will also see this within the UK as well. They call them MPs, and I will tell you honestly, as being from the United States, I struggled a bit on what the acronym MP meant, and because coming from a military background, that was military police, so I had no idea what an MP was. I knew they had something to do with the legislature, but wasn't real sure. So they asked their members of parliament to reset their passwords. Now, they're calling it out as a foreign government espionage attack. Now, coming from a background where I was a red team for the U.S. government, that is very, very possible and highly probable. However, I'd also say is in that space, realistically, it could be anybody. Now, they could have been contracted by a foreign government, or maybe they just had a bone to pick with the Australians. Who knows? I mean, I don't know how, because no one's really upset at the Australians. But bottom line is they called out this breach, and the fact is they're saying their password should be reset. They also said that they did not see that any data was actually copied or stolen. They think of it more as a just kind of targeting and learning kind of exercise. Typically, what I would do in a previous life and as a red team is we would get within an environment and then we would just sit there and soak up the information as much as we could. The goal was not to get highlighted. So this is probably typically one of those things as well. But again, it doesn't have to be a corporate espionage or a governmental espionage to do this. It could be anybody, but those are just kind of the tricks of the trade, as they would say. One of the things they're a little bit more sensitive to it in Australia because in 2011, the Australian Prime Minister Julia I'm going to just butcher this name, Gillard. I think it's Gillard. It could be Gillard or something like that. I don't know. And so if you're anybody from Australia and I just totally offended you, I apologize substantially. Did not mean to do it, but I don't know how to say your last name. That's why my name is Shon, S-H-O-N, because I don't have a very big brain, so it makes it a whole lot easier to spell my name. But it was hacked in 2011, and basically it came down to is they, since their prime minister was hacked, they have made substantial strides to reduce this capability. And I think in 2016, they invested a lot of money into also upgrading their environment to avoid cybersecurity hackers. They basically found out that there were 2 Chinese hackers that had done it at the time, and they labeled it back to China. Again, that can be debated on whether or not that's the case or not, but bottom line, that's what happened. So therefore, they're a little more sensitive around this stuff, and I would kind of say I wish the U.S. government would probably focus a little bit deeper on this, even though they're targeted all the time. But anyway, that being said, they said it was a foreign government that was doing it. My argument on that is, well, maybe, possibly, highly possibly, but then again, you don't know. So a lot of people in this space get contracted for hires. You just never know. All right, so that's the big trouble and the down under with the members of parliament and a password reset. Now, I got this off of Security Ledger and the Security Ledger, and a gentleman by the name of Rob Black had this post that he put out there, and it basically talks about the 4 signs you need a virtual CISO, which is a Chief Information Security Officer. And the purpose of reduced cyber risk is, one, to reduce the cyber risk of your company, your business, but also to provide you ability to have cybersecurity training made simple. And when you're dealing with a virtual CISO, if you're a business owner looking at this, or if you're a security professional listening to this and deciding, you know what, maybe we need a virtual CISO, this is a really good article. It kind of talks about what are the main 4 things you need to consider. One is cost and consistency, right? So are you willing to pay for a full-time Chief Information Security Officer, CISO, commonly called? They can be expensive. They quote in the article that it's around $220,000 US with you figure total compensation is probably around $270, $280. I've seen high as CISOs reaching up to $350, $400, and as low as $150, $140. But bottom line is you get all different ranges. It just kind of depends upon the company and what they're willing to pay. But there is a cost with that. And if you want some level of consistency, which you would get with a full-time resource, you can get that with a virtual CISO. You just wouldn't get them as often. But that's where the virtual CISO comes into play, and you're not necessarily relying on the IT guy. And I actually was talking to a friend that isn't even an IT person. He's a project manager, and he's doing IT for his company, which I think is probably happening a lot more than you would think, just because there's just not enough resources. However, that being said, that's where a virtual CISO kind of comes into play. So do you decide, do you want a virtual guy or gal, or do you want one on the roll call? And that's the other thing. So we're going to get into the 4 steps that they recommended, which I concur with as well. Number 1 is customers are telling you. So are your customers that you have in your business telling you that you need a security person to help you out or to do this work? One is they're asking questions, when was your last pen test, which is a penetration test? Are you SOC 2 certified? Okay. Are you any sort of certification such as ISO 27001? So another certification question. Your vendors are requiring you to have a cybersecurity person on staff potentially. So that's the customers are telling you this. The second one is regulators are telling you this, which can be very challenging, right? So New York Department of Financial Services, they are saying you have to have somebody on the roll. We've talked about this reduced cyber risk numerous times. A security expert on staff, not necessarily, or basically on the books, you need to have. And you can outsource this, especially with NYDFS. You can outsource it to a third party, but you got to have somebody. You can't just say, yeah, the janitor's doing it. Yeah, that guy. No, that won't work. So regulators are telling you. A third one is you have mergers and acquisitions. A good example of this was the Marriott merger or acquisition of Starwood Suites, I think is what it was. They were riddled with various malware that was within the Starwood environment. Well, because of that, what ended up happening is they brought it right on over with them. I've experienced this in my own career that when you're dealing with an acquisition, there are some minimum standards you may need to consider when you are bringing a company on. Well, if you don't know what those minimum standards are, or you don't have a security person to help you, you might be in a situation where you're bringing on somebody else's trash, and you don't want that. And so you would make sure that that's written into the contract before you bring these companies on, that they clean up their trash. So something to consider on that. Or you have a nagging sense, right? You've got a CIO, CTO, Chief Compliance Officer, CCO, and a Chief Data Privacy Officer, DPO. Lots of acronyms, right? But you got no CISO or no CSO. Oh, right. Well, maybe that's not a good thing. So you got to decide, right? If you're a small company, virtual CISO works really good. If you're a medium-sized company, you might want to consider it, or you might want to hire somebody full-time. If you're a large multinational, virtual CISO, yeah, that's probably not the best option. It'll probably get way more expensive than just hiring somebody and putting them on the books. But through Reduce Cyber Risk, I've got some great training, cybersecurity training made simple, around hiring the right security person for your organization, and to kind of vet out, do you want a virtual CISO? But then these are the 4 things that they brought up from Rob Black. I'll have the the links in the show notes as well. You'll have all of that. But bottom line is you got to ask yourself, do you need one? Another news is U.S. senators request DHS to look into foreign VPN usage. So in a recent security snapshot that I put together for email subscribers, I kind of talk about this around what can you do to stop VPN usage, or how can you manage your VPNs. But in this case here is the VPN is a virtual private network, and a virtual private network allows you to have access into your data center, into your own network from a remote location. These things are really good. They've been around for a long time. And if you put the right level of security on them, they're a good tool, and you can put a lot of things in place to mitigate the risk. However, the challenge with them is, in this case, as far as this article is concerned, the U.S. government is having individuals that work for the U.S. that are utilizing third-party VPN software that is not made in the U.S., right? So it comes down to you got Chinese VPN software or Russian VPN software that is utilizing the VPN technology, and you can get them all over the web. But what ends up happening is when they're connecting to your data center, they're routing to China and back to your data center. So they're kind of taking this long road out to China or Russia before they come back into your data center, if your data center is in a place other than China. Now, if your data center is in China, hey, that works out great. Not a very long road. But the bottom line is they're thinking that people are pilfering the data. They're acting as a man in the middle. And 60% of all VPN apps out there are Chinese owned and created. This is from Top 10 VPN portal. This is what they've said. That's a lot, okay? So are all of those bad? No, not at all. Are some of them bad? Yeah, probably. There's probably some of them in there that are being used that they are then siphoning off data or copying data and putting it in different places. So you got to understand if that's something you want to deal with or not. But the U.S. senators are saying, obviously they've got some intelligence reports that may be pointing them in this direction, but they're saying, we don't want that. So they're trying to get Department of Homeland Security to deal with this. And DHS has had some issues lately as well, as they were relating to DNS, which is a domain name service hack that's been occurring with from Iran. So they're highly, highly watching out what's going on here. And they kind of a note to talk about is in 2017, Kaspersky Labs was removed due to intelligence concerns and them stealing information. I've heard different reports around that, yeah, there was parts of it, but it necessarily wasn't Kaspersky. I don't know. You know, what's the truth and what's not the truth. Bottom line, you got to ask yourself, do you want a VPN that's created in a foreign country? Whether you're China and you want a U.S. created VPN, you might be thinking, well, maybe the American government's stealing stuff too. Maybe. Don't know. But again, that's the news for around U.S. senators requesting DHS to look into foreign VPN usage. All right, last bit of news before we get into our training is going to be PwC's annual corporate director survey. Now, this is interesting. This was from PwC's PricewaterhouseCoopers, and they talked about financial expertise on the board. Now, what that means is cybersecurity expertise, and how does that work with the board? Well, the financial expertise on the board, they say, is around 65%. So 65% of your people that are on the board are basically some level of financial guru, right? CPAs, financial planner guys. Yeah, see, I'm a security/pilot. What do I know? But financial expertise is about, most of them on the board have that background, which would make sense, right? CFO kind of guys, it's all about the money. Well, cybersecurity expertise that's on the board. Now, there's been numerous things calling out that you need to do this, but right now, cybersecurity people that are on the boards is around 16%, 16%. Personally, I think that's better than I thought it would be, just because cybersecurity is still so new. The boards may not have seen it as a real big threat at this point. However, they said 1/3 of all the boards have no experience whatsoever. Now, what they mean by that is the 16% is dedicated cybersecurity people, right? Now, there also is your IT guy who might be on the board, or there might be somebody else, because I'm not on the board, so I don't know who that is. But you may have other people on the board that have some level of IT experience, but what they're saying is that 1/3 of the boards have no experience whatsoever with cybersecurity. They also highlighted a part that I think is kind of interesting is around presentation skills, that CISOs came in last as it relates to presentation skills for the board, right? So the CISO is your Chief Information Security Officer. They came in last. And I was like, bummer. Why is that? Well, in most cases, and I'm just going to be blunt, most security guys are geeks, and most techies are geeks, and they aren't given a lot of opportunities to talk in front of guys that are non-geeks. And so therefore what ends up happening is they don't really know how to turn geeky talk into non-geek talk so that the non-geeks can understand what the geeks are saying. I hope you follow me on that one. Bottom line is their presentation skills aren't very good. So there's some things you got to consider as a CISO or as a security person. Get good on the soft skills. And I've said this before to people that have been mentored and other security folks that I've mentioned and I've talked to in the past. If you can talk to people at a level they understand, especially as it relates to security, you are golden. You are in a good spot because so many of them, they can't talk their way out of a paper bag. I don't know how you get in a paper bag to talk your way out of. But anyway, you can't talk your way out of a paper bag. Also, it helps to have an education like mine, where it's about the 3rd grade level. Makes it a whole lot easier to talk to people when they're at like the 10th grade level. So just keep that in your mind. And also, they were concerned about the risk, especially as technology changes. A big concern of them is technology is changing drastically. And they see it. They know it. But they don't know what to do with it. And they really don't know how to address it. So that's something else that you got to work on. If you're a security professional, you got to help your board and basically your senior leaders understand the risk and so forth. They also mentioned, which I thought was interesting, 10% don't have it, don't want it, don't need it. Yeah, I think it's short-sighted, but hey, more power to you. Hopefully they're not a bank. But anyway, so that's where that's at. Now, the recommendations they had was you educate, right? You got to influence your senior leaders, educate your board, talk to them about this. If you can get on their calendars, the board might be 1 or 2 people, right? If you have a small place, it could be just that. But again, it's all about educating. And I'll say before, from a CISO's or security standpoint, it is about influence. And that means you got to know your stuff and you got to be able to communicate with them in a way they understand. Not at your geeky level, at their level. Last thing is the National Association of Corporate Directors recommended some level of training for them. And that's good. It's really, I took the training, I looked at it, it's really good as it relates to what is cyber and how do you need to worry about it. And that training talks more from like the board language people. I like to use the analogy of if you're a shark, do you talk to dolphins and do dolphins understand you? Well, if you're a shark, you're listening to a podcast, more power to you. You're awesome. But bottom line, though, is they speak different languages. So you got to understand the language you can speak to it. So I'd even recommend, you go and you check out the National Association of Corporate Directors training if you are a security professional, because guess what? You'll learn some of their lingo, and that way you can communicate your lingo into theirs. That's all I've got for cybersecurity news, but you can check out the references. Here they are on the slide and also have them in the show notes. But let's roll right into the training. Hi, this is Shon Gerber with Reduce Cyber Risk, and this is part 1 of 2 parts of my cybersecurity training around cyber awareness training. And this is part of the CISSP supplement information that I put out there. This is supplemental information and training that you can get that's in conjunction with the CISSP training that I put out that is for sale. You can find out there on the web and at Reduce Cyber Risk. But this is going to be a great piece that you can add on to your training capability with the CISSP. All right, cyber awareness training, part 1. Now, when we're dealing with security awareness training, there's different terms, and the first focused term that we'll get on is security awareness, and what does it actually mean? Now, it provides content to help or address and change user behavior. That's the ultimate purpose of security awareness training, is that it makes a change to the individual or the user so that they will make the change in their behavior as it relates to cyber security measures and practices. It's usually a risk-based approach, and it's providing the best guidance and awareness that you possibly can. You also got to understand that as you provide security awareness training for your employees, they're not all going to get it. It's going to be a continuous process, but it also needs to be a risk-based approach. Just knowing that your employees, there's some things they can and cannot, they can and cannot get. And you can beat them over the head with a lot of training, hoping that they will fix the problem. But in many cases, all it does is exacerbate the problem. So you need to make sure that when you are providing this training to them, it is a risk-based approach. You need to focus on all users. There are ones that are active and not active. This kind of falls into place, especially as it relates to contractors. You may have users that are very active within your environment, and the others that maybe are contractor basis, and they kind of show up once every month, every 6 months, or so forth. You also need to establish a minimum standard for all users. So what is the baseline for security training that you're going to provide to your users? And what is that? And make sure that everybody gets the same level of training. And now this can be done through various methods, such as an LMS, which is a learning management system. Then you can have that training already spelled out and done for them. All they have to do is plug it in and go, right? Avoidance is a very bad idea. You definitely do not want to avoid not doing some level of security awareness training as it relates to due diligence and what ends up happening with in the event there's a breach. One of the big aspects that roll into this is the due diligence piece of it. And if you don't do security awareness thinking, yeah, it's just a bunch of some hooey that we're just talking on a screen about, nobody really cares about it, no one's actually doing it, there's no reason for it. Well, that's a bad attitude to have. The purpose around that is if you do have any sort of regulatory requirements, one, that is in some cases specified and mandated. In other cases, if you decide not to do it and a breach does occur, well, then you got to ask yourself, are you prepared? And then if it goes to court, one of the things they're going to bring up is, did you train your employees? So security awareness training is a valuable tool, one, from the fact that it teaches your employees, but two, also from a due diligence perspective. What is security education? It's a detailed process for educating individual users. And how does this work? Well, it's most often associated with users and certifications. So let's say, for example, that you have a software development company, and you have developers that are on staff, and these people are looking for, or they're doing your standard development work. Well, the question then comes into, did you provide some level of security education for your developers? Did you provide that? And is there maybe a certification where it's an internal certification that you are qualified to develop in C# security with security practices or security principles? That would be security education. So you have to, those are the different things you got to consider as you're creating this product. Training programs need to be created to enhance the overall education. Again, kind of like I talked about before, where if you're a development shop and you have some sort of security certification you're going to provide to them, maybe a certificate that you may be available, that would be a security education. Security training, it teaches employees to work tasks and comply with policies. It's best for all employees, but at least new personnel should get this training. And so that's what ends up happening with a new person that comes in. That's the baseline security training they get for your company. It's best for all employees, but at least new personnel should get this. And what I've seen personally is that there's been situations where a company will bring on a new one from an M&A situation, from mergers and acquisitions, and the other company has never taught security awareness training at all to their people. So that's a great opportunity through security education and security training that you can provide your employees some level of knowledge around security. You need to teach your users and your company's risk tolerance, and this comes down to your policies that maybe you've created around this. Could be acceptable use. It could be your BYOD policies as it relates to your mobile devices. So you just need to teach your company the risk tolerance around cybersecurity and what you need to do with it. Revisions need to occur routinely based on the ever-changing needs that you run into within the environment, right? And as you get new tools in your environment, you need to make changes to it. So security training can change quite a bit. I've provided that in most cases to my HR people for them to provide for new employees that start. They get some level of security training, and that's on top of the annual cybersecurity awareness training. So the way I break it out is, one, you have your cyber awareness training, cybersecurity awareness training, which is a yearly event that we teach people. It's on phishing, the things that go along with that. Then step 2 would be my security training for any new people that start the company. So if you started the company, you have a specific training that's above and beyond what you would get for your cybersecurity awareness training. Then the third thing is specifically security education around security practices as it relates to very specific fields. What do you do? What's your responsibilities, and so forth. Now, key methods and tests. Now, as you're dealing with key awareness and training methods, you need to provide phishing tests against your employees. Now, this can be very simple or it can be very complex. And a lot of it depends upon what your time availability is and also your budget. If you have a situation where you're working with a third party to help you with phishing, that can be a way to save you some time. It may not save you money, but it'll save you time. Or you can do the phishing yourself, which is a little bit more complex and takes a little bit more work on your part. There's also training videos you put with your LMS, which is your learning management system. You can get multiple videos online on how to do security awareness training, and you can utilize and dump those into an LMS. There are direct one-on-one discussions with people. You can have webinars with people as well. Like even that comes even to like a lunch and learn where you're sitting down talking with people on a one-on-one basis, or you could just do a webinar on YouTube and have it or on the internet and have it available for people as well. There's brochures, there's pamphlets, all the documents that you can give to people. All that stuff kind of falls in that as well. Now, phishing tests. We kind of briefed on these a little bit, but you got internal and external. So an external would be such as a company called PhishMe. And I'm not a paid endorsement of PhishMe by any means, but that's a company I've dealt with in the past, and they have a really good program that falls around teaching the phishing aspect along with the training piece that goes with that. And it can be very, very simple, or it can be super complex. So the simple piece would have a link inside an email to the more complex where it's actually social engineering an individual trying to get them to buy or not even necessarily even click on a link, to basically go through the process of even setting a wire transfer. Bait is very important. And one thing you need to consider as you are creating a different kind of capability for your team and for your environment is you need to consider what is the best bait or the best thing you're going to use to lure people into this space. People like free stuff. They really do. Whether it is a free phone, whether it's $50 gift cards, you name it. If you put free stuff on it, odds are high people will click on it. And the other thing to consider is that you don't need everybody to click. All you need is one person to click, just one. And from a hacker standpoint, that just one person will basically be all you need. So you need to teach your people that as you do the phishing test, you're going to get a large percentage of people that will click. You're going to get probably anywhere consider yourself in good shape if you get only 4 to 5% to click, but realistically, you're going to get people clicking. But the goal is that you have to teach them that just because they are the employee, by clicking on a link, they are incurring some level of risk for the company, and there has to be ramifications for that. Now, whatever you do, use metrics. Whenever you use these, you should use metrics at all costs. It's very important to utilize, but the thing you need to be very important about with this is that when you're dealing with metrics, it kind of goes to the next budget, the next bullet. Avoid retribution and don't do stump the dummy. The whole point of that is that people make mistakes, and you can make these tests extremely challenging for people so that they end up clicking the link no matter what. It's going to happen. So the question is how bad do you make it, and how much pain do you put your people through? So it's important not to humiliate people. It really is. And I've seen some situations where leadership has said, well, if anybody clicks the link, they're going to potentially lose their job. You got to be very careful with that. I can see it if you have someone who is a consistent, repeated offender, and they're always doing it and they're always clicking the link. Yeah, that makes more sense potentially. However, the simple fact of the matter is that if you do that and you start saying, I'm going to fire people because of this, you will lose people pretty quick, and you may lose some of your senior leaders because guess what? Everybody clicks on links. I'm sorry to say, but they're kind of taught to do that. And so therefore, it's important that you don't humiliate people. It's also from a protection standpoint, what are some things you can do? One of those would be you can set up rules within Office 365 or other email platforms that will basically say you can have it sent from an external sender. And this basically puts a little label at the top where if it comes from an outside party not inside your network, it will highlight or put a label on your email saying this was sent from an outside entity. That allows you to kind of key in on this rather than just say, hey, this email comes in and someone spoofed the email, which basically means they kind of copied the email and they made it look like it came from an internal source. that will highlight the fact that it's coming from an external source. And then you also provide some level of education for your people. It's imperative that you do the education aspects when you're putting these protections in place. Now, training videos, you can pay for these. These can be ones that are paid or free. Again, you get what you pay for in this regard. If you pay for some of these, there's some really high-quality videos that you can get that aren't super expensive, but you can also get ones out there that are free that can walk you through what you need to know. Again, I come back to is you get what you pay for on this stuff. So if you just want basic cyber awareness, a free version may work. You just have to know what your employees are like and what they expect from the training that they get. Simple is best, though. Avoid the technical lingo as much as possible. And here's some good ones that I love is cybersecurity governance, process control, firewall logs, packet captures, PCAPs. All of those will confuse people. They don't normally talk like that. So if you can create a training that, and I like to say this at the third grade level, where people will understand it, you will go a long ways and make a big, significant impact within your organization. Entertaining is way better, and you need to avoid the monotone conversations that you're talking about. That it's imperative. And I see this all the time, especially with security videos that are out there on the web. It's actually quite entertaining. You'll see this. You'll go, yes, you need to focus on cybersecurity governance process, the process control network, firewall logs, and PCAPs and packet captures. So they just talk in monotone voices, and within 2.3 seconds, you are asleep. Please, you are asleep. Now, don't do that. Whatever you do, make sure your videos are entertaining. They are not. They have to be fun. Now, they may be not very foolish, like sometimes this videos and podcasts are, but that's okay. It's better to have that and for people to talk about it than it is to be a boring platform. You don't want that at all. Now, some of your video platforms you can utilize is YouTube. That's a great place that you can get videos and put them out there and download, allow people to get access to those. Another one is just we talked about before, a learning management system. Also, you can get those at Reduce Cyber Risk. It's another one of the things that we'll be providing is some security awareness videos that you can use for your employees. And it's just a great tool to kind of walk through what is phishing? How is it? How do you deal with it? So on and so forth. Again, these are all really good places. And then you can get Udemy and other places you can download this training, these videos as well. So again, the purpose of the training videos is to give your people something rather than nothing at all. But that's that. Okay, so that is all we have for part one. We're going to go ahead and that'll conclude this piece of it, but we'll get into part two next week. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed Reduce Cyber Risk. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. The whole purpose of this podcast is to provide you cybersecurity training made simple. That's what we want to do. And go ahead, check out Reduce Cyber Risk. I got a bunch of free stuff that's there and available for you. If you are a cybersecurity professional looking to get the CISSP, I have some training that's set aside specifically for you that's going to help your CISSP and to help your business as well. It's very important to just give you, it says another supplemental that I have available specifically for individuals that are working on their security certifications. And it doesn't have to be just the CISSP. It's any certification that you may have would be a very valuable resource. Also, there's if you're HR people and you want to look at, are you looking to hire the right person? Or if you're a hiring manager, I've got some training on my site specifically for you as well. So go check it out, Reduce Cyber Risk, a lot of free stuff. Sign up for my email list and you'll get a bunch of free content that I got coming. I've also got some bonus content that's going to be coming. You'll be getting those through emails as well around cybersecurity news and some expectations on that. All right, hope you enjoyed it. Have a wonderful day. We'll catch you on the flip side. See ya.